I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you so much to Llewellyn. This is a really fun event. I have been to this event, I think, pretty much every year since it started, and I always try to attend as many of the talks as I can, and I just love it. It's a fabulous resource for people. So I'm very excited to be here. If you don't know me, hello, my name is Lisa, and Lisa Papez, and I have a YouTube channel by that same name. So some of you may know me from there, but I am going into all kinds of worlds now. I've written a book that is coming out by Llewellyn this year, actually in October. So that is called Unlocking the Tarot, Create Your Own Keys. And I have just created my first tarot deck that just funded on Kickstarter last month. So we're in the thick of things and bringing that to life, which has been really, really amazing. So I am going to get into it because I know we have a limited time, and y'all, it takes me at least a half an hour to make any kind of YouTube video too. So the fact that we're gonna contain this it's a challenge. We'll see how I do. But please feel free to interact in the chat. We're gonna have a couple of interactive portions throughout this talk. So definitely encourage you to chat. It will not overwhelm me at all. We'll have a little bit of a Q&A portion at the end, so you can bring your questions to me. I created a PowerPoint kind of deal to share. So I'm going to pop that up on the screen. It's mostly because I have the attention span of your average squirrel. So I want to make sure that I stay on track. It's so lovely to see so many familiar faces. Hello, everybody, and hello to all the new folks who are joining us. I really, really appreciate you being here. Let me pop this up, see if I can do it correctly. Oh, I think it's working. Okay, cool. And I think we're looking good. Everybody can see the little PowerPoint. It's not fancy. Y'all, I saw some other people's PowerPoints and I was like, my PowerPoint skills not awesome, but it'll keep me on track. That's the main point. Today we're going to be talking about keywords, the power keywords. I am intensely passionate about keywords. Thank you, Jessica. I'm intensely passionate about keywords. I think they are fantastic. I think they're wonderful tools. So you're going to hear me geek out about that a bit as we talk about things today. So a little bit about me. I kind of covered most of this already, so we can probably breeze past this, but I will just emphasize the tarot enthusiast bit. I am an absolute tarot nerd. I have been playing with tarot cards since I was 19, 20 years old. And that really is a huge part of my story and my passion for keywords, actually, because my very first deck I ever really read with any consistency, or the one that I guess I could say taught me tarot, was a keyword. I would call it a keyword based deck. Instead of titles like Page of Cups or King of Pentacles or Seven of Swords, it was a single keyword on every card. And that made tarot accessible to me and so much more. So we're going to get into it. But I am a total tarot nerd. I have tons and tons of decks. Y'all know, if you watch my channel, I have a lot of decks, and I'm constantly bringing in more and reviewing them and all kinds of fun things. But I am a total tarot nerd. So I love all things tarot. So I want to start off here because this is where we get locked up as soon as the topic of keywords comes up. And that's why I wanted to address this right at the beginning, so that you all who are like thinking of bailing because like, I don't need keywords. They're not just for beginners. And I think that is a common misconception about keywords. They can be helpful for beginners, and we definitely want to underscore that. But keywords are so much more. In general, a good way to think of a keyword is that it is a way to distill a very, very big idea into a very, very small package. And when we think of it that way, because that is how we commonly would describe keywords, we understand that you can have a very complex system or a very complex idea, and you can sort of shrink it down into this one single word. And that is, I think, where we get stuck, because we tend to think of keywords as something that we sort of use to bring an idea down and make it very, very, very concise. And keywords are great for that. But that's not all they're good for. So I need to like make this big for a split second so I can see what the heck I'm looking at. It doesn't show me my own thing. What is my point here? It's supposed to keep me on track, but now I can't see it. Oh, I know how I can do it. Okay, there we go. So I just said this, but keywords aren't just for learning, although they are wonderful for that. They're not just for being a memory aid and helping you remember the meaning of the card, although they're incredibly, incredibly effective at doing that. And the reason I say this is because we do pigeonhole this idea of keywords. I got like there we go. Sometimes, y'all, sometimes. So something else to consider is that the word itself gives us an indication of what keywords can be. They're a key. By definition, a keyword is a key. That's why it's called that. And I really leaned into this concept hard. Poor Barbara, when we were talking about cover ideas for my book that's coming out in the fall, I was like, keys, locks, keys. I was like very fixated on that idea. And they actually executed it beautifully. I'll show you the cover near the end of the talk, but it made me really, really happy, not gonna lie. So when we think about, if we think about keywords as keys, the question then becomes, what does a keyword unlock? If it is a key, what does it unlock? Yeah, there might be some freezing, y'all, and it's all good. Just remember the playbacks will be smooth as silk. So if you end up with any connection issues, either refresh or plan to watch it back. Should be good to go. All right, so what does a keyword unlock? Everything. And I don't feel like I'm being dramatic here. I really don't. I think that if you reverse your view of a keyword, instead of seeing it as something that shrinks down a big idea into something small, think of it as a small thing that opens up your access to something big. In a lot of ways, keywords are they unlock the opportunity to explore all of the potential meaning of that card, all of the potential meaning. And that is invaluable. If you are new to tarot, that's invaluable because you get something very simple to start with, something to get you going. And then as a more advanced reader, that gives you the opportunity to explore. It's kind of like, is anybody in the room, or if you're watching this back later, just consider this for a second. If you are a gamer, if you play video games, or if you play I went right to video games because that's where I go. But role-playing games, like tabletop role-playing games, there's the concept of a sandbox game. So does anybody know what that is? I'll define it so you don't have to know. But a sandbox style game is a game that allows you to explore. Instead of putting you on a direct linear path from point A to point B to point C, you are given a wide open world that you get to explore in whatever order you want to explore it in. Maybe you don't want to go talk to this character in this little village. Maybe you want to go fight the dragon right away. You know what I mean? There's ways that you can explore and expand and decide what you're going to do when. Keywords give us the opportunity to either go down a very linear path and go from point A to point B if that's what we need to do, but for those of us who've been reading tarot for a long time or who have a good basic understanding of the tarot, keywords allow us to sandbox explore the meaning of that card. They give us a way to do that. I'll explain kind of how that works. So I want to talk about this because this is something that I think we don't talk about enough. Tarot, by its very nature, is kind of gatekeepy. And I'm not saying that to be inflammatory. I'm saying it because it's kind of true. When we think about the vast esoteric background of tarot, if you've ever heard like a real academic tarot nerd talk about tarot, imagine that you had never been exposed to tarot cards at all before. And then you run across somebody, maybe their YouTube channel, or maybe you see somebody giving a lecture on tarot, and they're getting into like the Golden Dawn and all of this esoteric history and all these rich meanings that exist in the tarot. You're going to be like, oh, whoa, that's too much. Wow, how will I ever learn that? It's going to feel very much like there's a wall between you and this tool that can be so powerful. I feel like by its nature, because it has such a rich history, because there's so many layers of understanding, of knowledge, of background to how tarot came to be, the layers of meanings in every individual card, not to mention the multiple systems of tarot, by its nature, its esoteric history can make it seem so complex that it's impossible to learn. I'd also like to point out that outside of the major arcana, the actual titles of the cards don't tell us anything. Sure, we've got in the major arcana cards like strength. Okay, that gives us some information. Or what's another good one? Justice. Sometimes judgment, although those ones can be quite tricky, actually, if you just go by the words. But then there's ones where in the major arcana, the titles are, if you take them literally, kind of alarming and uncomfortable. Fool, will make a lot of people, if they know nothing about the tarot, think of stupidity or foolishness in a really negative context, which sure, we could go there with that card, but that's not the whole of what it is. Then we think of cards that are even worse, like death. And I mean, the amount of modern media tropes around the death card, like we could have a whole lecture just on what death represents and why it's not a super terrifying card every single time it comes up. It's got layers. So think of that through the eyes of a beginner or somebody who's never been exposed to tarot. And now you see these really like big, kind of confusing card titles through the majors. Then you get into the minors. And let's say you want to know, what should I do about this difficult situation at my work? And you pull out a tarot deck, you've never worked with one before, and you pull the Three of Pentacles. Okay. What does that tell you? It tells you literally nothing. And if we want to get technical, and I know that this isn't going to be a hugely popular opinion, but I don't think the meanings are very obvious in the images. Particularly, like I know that that Pamela Coleman Smith's artwork did a better job of this than any of the predecessors, in my opinion. But even still, let's look at the Six of Cups. If you know the Six of Cups in the Rider-Waite-Smith, then you know that it's like these two children or two young people, and one of them maybe is handing a potted plant or something to the other. Let's just take it at its face. The Six of Cups is about presents, giving each other gifts, right? That's what it's about. Do you know what I mean? So even if the image is clear and we see what's happening on the image, we don't immediately understand how to connect the image to the meaning of the card. It becomes obvious over time as you learn the meanings of the cards, but not immediately. Yeah, definitely depends on the deck. But when we're thinking of like sort of the classic tarot, that's kind of what I'm imagining here when I say this. So by its nature, tarot is kind of gatekeepy. And then when you add on the fact, and we talked about this a bit in the first point, but when you add on the fact that there are layers and layers of meaning in every card, it can make it really, really difficult. Even as a practiced, experienced reader, it can really be difficult to bring the image or bring the meaning rather down into something that is digestible and applicable to the question and is relatable. That can be super challenging. And that's something to keep in mind. And on top of that, and so these last 2 points, like the point about being able to distill the meaning down, that's a challenge that advanced readers and experienced readers struggle with, I think, all the time. The more you learn about every single card, the more it can be a practice in finessing the meaning when you pull a card in a reading for yourself or somebody else, and you want to actually get the point across, but you're like, oh, but the Kabbalah, and oh yeah, but then there's this astrology thing I learned last week, and then oh, there's this book I read that gave this totally new perspective on this card, and I want to weave that in, and you can actually get very much in the weeds with it and have a hard time bringing it down. And on top of all of that, knowing the meanings really, really well of every single card does not help you necessarily to put the cards together and create a cohesive meaning out of that combined whole. That's, I think, the piece that so many of us really, really, really struggle with is, sure, you have a really great understanding of the Six of Cups and you have a really great understanding of the Eight of Pentacles, but now put those two things together in a sentence. Create a whole meaning out of the combination of these two cards. Okay, go. And yes, you can get there. But these are areas where I think we have sort of these sort of barriers to a clear, cohesive experience working with the cards. And that's the thing that I think is worth keeping in mind when we think about keywords and how they can be beneficial. So I kind of already covered this. The more you know, the harder it gets. And this is true. If you are a tarot nerd or a tarot junkie like I am, and you really love learning about the tarot, you know that you're never done. You know that there's always more and more and more that you could learn and add to your book, your sort of internal book of knowledge. And the more you add, the harder it is to narrow down when you're in a reading, right? So let's move on here. So how do keywords help with all of these problems, right? First of all, we already know how to use keywords. We use them all of the time in daily life. I'll give you some examples because that's how I roll. So when we go to Google to look something up, we're not typing in a very specific phrase of exactly what we're looking for usually. We usually type in something that will lead us in the right direction for what it is we're looking up. We maybe don't start with, I want a butter shortbread recipe that contains chocolate chips, walnuts, and raisins. No, we go and we go, okay, I want to look up good cookie recipes. And then we like sort of travel along that path until we arrive at what feels right. You know, what is it we're actually looking for? What is it we're trying to get to? And so when we Google things and we search them up on the internet, we're using keywords. Um, we do this when we're job hunting, when we write our resumes. We don't try to explain with paragraphs and paragraphs what each of our skills is and what they mean. We use kind of keywords. We use power words that convey an idea with as few words as possible. You know, we might say we're organized, we're proactive. These are the examples that jumped to mind when I was creating the slides. But we create language to convey a large idea with a little bit less information. That's something we do all the time in daily life. Another thing that we do a lot is we see keywords in advertising. Most of us have a general idea of what something means when it says it's sustainable or it's clean. It might not be true. That's a whole other layer we could dig into, but we know what these words are trying to convey to us. And I think that's something we need to understand about how keywords function in a fundamental way. We use them in lifestyle. I could give more examples. But the point here is that keywords give us a jumping off point. And this is something I want you to consider because we're going to play with this concept a little. Keywords function in two fundamentally different ways. One, they give us a jumping off point so that we can get deeper meaning. We can zoom out on what the keyword is. So we take a word like bliss, right? We can zoom out and go, okay, what does that mean? What does that look like? Where does that take us in our minds? The other thing keywords can do, though, is they can help us drill down to an essential meaning, especially if we have a lot of layers we're trying to convey. How can we distill it down and get a clear idea about how to express what we're trying to express or explore what we're trying to explore? My favorite way to think about keywords is as a portal. Keywords are portals. And I couldn't resist because this is an image from my upcoming deck, but it is a portal in the card. So forgive my self-indulgence, but I had to because it's pretty and it's unicorns and it's, you know, it's how I roll. But a portal, when we think of keywords as a portal is something you step through in order to get somewhere else. You're trying to use the keyword as a gateway, as a portal, and we're trying to use that keyword to help us get either into a more expanded idea of what that card means or and ideally into a more personalized idea of what that card means every time we pull that card. And this is sort of the premise of what went into writing Unlocking the Tarot, which is the Llewellyn book that we're obviously talking about today. What went into that was the idea that I wanted to help others to assign a word that worked for you, like to help you assign a word that works for you, a personalized word that can help you, that can serve as your portal for that card. And it helps if you fine tune these words, if you fine tune the word for something that really, really, really works for you. That's really important. So if you just take the keyword at face value, that can also work, and that's worth exploring and working with. Some decks have a keyword on them already, worth playing with, worth getting familiar with, and comfortable with the idea of working with keywords in general. But it becomes so much more powerful when you create your own, when you sort of assign your own, when you pick a word that really, really works for you. That's really important. Okay, so we're going to do this together. This is an interactive sort of deal. If you're watching this back, that's just as valid. You can write this down on a piece of paper. You can, if you are watching this live, you can throw it in the chat. But I'd like you to think about the word suspension. And as you think about that word, I'd like you to just write down, or share in the chat anything the word suspension makes you think about. Could be another word it makes you think of. Could be what is that grammatical term? Synonym. I write books, y'all. It could be a synonym. It could be something, just an idea. It could be an image. It could be a scene from a favorite movie. It can be anything. What does it make you think of? I'm going to have a sip of my beverage. This is a great opportunity for me to have a little sip. I love these in the chat. So some of the words I'm seeing in chat are freeze, bridge, chemistry, hanging, stuck, holding. We had a couple of holdings. Waiting, safety, cars, stasis. Ooh, lower it. Interesting. Halting. Oh my God, there's so many good ones in the chat. Somebody said fruit in Jello, and I'm living for that answer. Limbo, bridge. I love that bridge has come up a couple times. Floating, dangling. Oh my God, these are so good. Pending, pausing. Oh my God, amazing. Stillness, waiting. Okay, this is amazing. I'm gonna give you a couple more seconds, and then I'm gonna change my slide. Here was some of mine. All right, so I had postponement, pause, dangling, interruption, deferral, intermission, tethered, hanging, floating, and stasis, some of which we saw in the chat. So anyone want to throw a wild guess at what card this keyword might be describing? What tarot card this might be an excellent keyword for? Yeah, I love whoever said fruit and Dello too. It's amazing. You, you guys are amazing. Look at y'all go. Look at how we got there for a minute. Think about how cohesive that felt for us as a group to just sit there with that one word and consider what it could mean. And I'm a nerd, y'all, and this is actually the keyword that I talk about in my book. But the reason I love suspension so much for the Hanged Man is because I love me a double meaning, and we get suspension in the terms of pause and that sort of waiting period, but we also get suspension in literally being suspended. He is literally hanging upside down. And we all immediately understood that we were talking about the Hanged Man. There was no doubt in the chat whatsoever. That's what makes this so freaking powerful. When you can really pick a word that for you evokes the idea of the card, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. So let's talk a little bit. And oh my gosh, this time is going so fast. Okay, let's talk about how to integrate keywords into your practice. First, this is easy. You can just read your little white book or your guidebook that comes along with your favorite tarot deck. And as you're reading each meaning for each card, think of the word that jumps out at you, either from the text itself or from something that text makes you think about. Okay. You can also create your own. And this is where I put in my shameless plug about my book, because that's the whole point. But you can then, once you have a keyword, make a quick reference sheet for yourself where you write down your one keyword per card. Or, and this is what I do in my Tarot with Training Wheels course I do on YouTube, which is really what the inspiration for this book was. But in that course, I sort of walk through, and I suggest that you actually take a Sharpie. You have to do this if you're not precious with your deck, okay? But write the keyword, your keyword, on every single card. And that just, yeah, really effective. And then you have a keyword-based deck that you can work with for yourself. Doing that on a deck that you really are drawn to, amazing, really helpful, works very well. And then use them in your readings. Really pull them out, start using them. Use them to determine when you're looking at buying a new deck, if the imagery on that card in that deck actually aligns with the way you see that card. I talk about this all the time. I use my keywords. If you watch any of my tarot deck reviews, I'm always referencing mentally, even if I don't say it out loud, I am always referencing mentally my own keywords. This comes up a lot for me with, say, the Three of Wands, which is a card about embarkation for me, about departing and going on a journey, mentally, creatively, or actually. And so I look for that embarkation, that sense of departing in all of my Three of Wands cards, always. It's embedded in my brain now. And that really helps me to deepen my relationship with the tarot. I think it's important to remember that keywords are not something that you stuff the meaning of tarot into. They're keys. They're keys. So last exercise, and then if we have any time, we'll do some quick questions, okay? So this time, we're going to reverse the portal. Now we're going to take a complex idea and we're going to distill it down. So just come along with me on this little journey. So there's a lot of text on this page. Don't worry about reading it all. You can even just listen for a second. Imagine what it feels like to discover that a friend has broken your confidence, sharing a secret with someone else without regard for your wishes, leaving you questioning the integrity of your relationships. Or imagine working tirelessly on a project at your job, only to have your boss criticize and dismiss your contributions, causing a huge hit to your confidence and self-esteem. Or imagine experiencing a painful breakup where harsh truths are revealed, making it difficult to move forward while you grapple with trying to process it. The feeling is that of pain, heartache, disappointment, and distress. But within all of these harsh feelings, there's also an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to change. These experiences lead to greater clarity and understanding. Most of all, these experiences can lead you in the direction of personal growth. Thinking about this idea, this complex set of feelings and experiences, think of a word that might express this experience. Can you think of any keywords that might work? And just throw those in the chat or throw it on a piece of paper, or if you're watching this back, like I said, write it down or just think about it for a second, and then I'll share a couple of mine. Y'all are amazing. Amazing. Yes, I'm loving these words. Yes. Yeah, totally. Really good words. Love that. Love that. Love that. Couple more seconds if you want to throw your thoughts into chat. These are great. I love some of these words. All right. So here's some of mine. So I have reckoning, lesson, awakening, adversity, betrayal, and regret. My favorite of the top two, reckoning and lesson. And a lot of you have thrown out what you think the card is. If you haven't already thrown a guess at what card we're talking about, throw it in the chat now and see where we end up. A couple of seconds. And then we'll have the big reveal. Y'all are so good. Look at this. Yes, absolutely the Three of Swords. Absolutely the Three of Swords. I hope that going through this actual exercise and looking at how we can distill a big idea down to a single word, or looking at how we can take a single word and expand it out into a whole bunch of different ideas, we can understand that keywords work in two directions, not just one. They're not just a memory tool. They're not just for beginners trying to remember and memorize the meanings of the tarot. They're that and more. We're not saying it is either or. We're saying it's yes and. Yes, keywords are great for beginners, and they are great for giving us a portal to deeper understanding of the tarot. Yes, keywords are a great memory aid, and they allow us to go so much deeper into the meaning of the cards. And I picked the cards that I did because I feel like there's a lot of layers to both of those cards. Three of Swords especially is one that really, I think, gets pigeonholed a lot into a simple meaning. And yes, in the book, I basically provide a detailed sort of like exploration of each word. I also talk you through, might as well put the slide up. I also talk you through in the book ways of putting cards together, ways of looking at a cohesive reading using this method. We look at spreads, we look at reading organically, but also reading in a very more linear way. I also go through helping you kind of pick keywords for the elements, picking keywords for numbers, and sort of combining those. If you have taken my Tarot with Training Wheels free course on YouTube, that's there for you as a resource. Or if you've taken my more expansive course, Tarot Bootcamp for Beginners, this is kind of like those two things got together and made a baby, a book baby. In my brain. So how do you determine which word it means, though? And this is a great time for a couple of questions. I know I'm coming up near the end of my time, but if you have any, throw them out and I'll do my best here. How do you determine which word it means, though, asks Angie. So I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. So you might want to expand on it a little bit for me if you can. But when it comes to assigning the keywords to the cards, the reason that I write it on the actual card is so that over time I can actually link the word and the card together in my mind over time. And it becomes something that is a wonderful tool and portal for exploration. But even more than that, I feel like it helps me. If you ever have read in a high pressure situation, or I used to do and still do sometimes readings where they're very, very fast paced back to back. Once a month, I do a reading for every single member in my YouTube membership. I do a reading. And so I do sit for 6-8 hours and I'm just reading the whole time, And so having keywords embedded in my mind also allow me to go through those readings and have like a fallback, if that makes sense. If my brain stutters, I've got something to go to, which is great. Somebody asked if I could tell you more about the structure of the book. Absolutely. So the way the book is structured is we begin by, I'd share more about the keyword method and why it's so important to me, why I find it helpful. We go in then through every single card in the deck because I want this book to be a reference as well as something you can just read if you want, but it's really designed to be something you can refer back to. And for every single card in the deck, I provide a keyword for the card itself. I also provide a couple of alternative keywords. And then I suggest that you go through that and figure out what jumps out at you for a keyword for yourself. Before we get into the minors, I also go through a whole system for understanding each element and how that plays into the tarot, and choosing a keyword for each element, as well as going into the numbers and a keyword for each number. Somebody asked about reversals, and I will say that the way that I work my keywords, and I get into this in the book, is I try wherever possible. There's a couple of cards where I feel like it doesn't serve to have a neutral keyword, but there is quite a few where I would say the most effective thing is to pick a neutral keyword. So a keyword that can be read both ways. Suspension, for example, in the Hanged Man, can be read in a positive light or in a negative light. And I think that most of the words that I use can be viewed that way. They give you wiggle room in the meaning, which I think is really important. There are a few where I go hard into positive or hard into negative, where it makes sense to me, but that is something you decide on a personal level. Is it illustrated? It's beautifully designed on the inside, and the Rider-Waite-Smith images are present throughout as a reference point, so you know what card we're talking about. And I do discuss what the Rider-Waite-Smith shows and how it ties into the word that I've chosen. And it's meant to be something that helps you to personalize. It's meant to be something that helps you to personalize. So yeah, so I hope that answered your question. About reading a reverse card is the opposite. It's not always. It's usually I try to have a flexible keyword that lets me go either direction. Just making sure I didn't miss, I'm sure I missed some questions here because there's a ton of great chat going on. How do you determine which is the best word, essentially, is what Angie Dara asked. So for me, it's in practice. My keywords have evolved. And in fact, if you get this book and you have done my Tarot with Training Wheels course, you'll see that some of my keywords have changed. And that happens as I work more and more and more with a particular keyword for a particular card. Sometimes I'll stumble on a word and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. When Reckoning came to my mind for Three of Swords, my old keyword was lesson. When Reckoning came to mind, I was like, oh my gosh, that's even better. Because for me, the Three of Swords is about wrapping your mind around what you've experienced. It's not the emotional experience itself, but the processing and analyzing and thought and growth that comes from that experience. Yes. Thank you so much, everybody. Yes, thank you. I'm so glad this was helpful, y'all. Oh, I can stop sharing now, I suppose. Okay, there we go. I'm so glad that this was helpful. And thank you so, so much for hanging out with me. And thank you for playing along. Whenever you do interactive exercises, it's always great. People are participating. So thank you so, so much. And thank you, as always, again, to Llewellyn for having me. Writing a book for Llewellyn was literally a lifelong dream of mine. So I am completely living my best life in this moment, and I'm so proud of it, and I am so excited to see it in y'all's hands. So thank you so, so much. I wish you all the very, very best. And as I like to say on my YouTube channel, may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye.